Encounter 1, The Sheet in the Dark, UK. There's something about decay that draws people in, whether it's the crumbling bricks, the graffiti-soaked walls, or the eerie silence broken only by footsteps. Some buildings just feel like they're holding secrets. And in one small British town, 2 urban explorers found out how dangerous it can be to uncover them. Wasaf Ahmadi wasn't new to the game. Known for his stripped-down, handheld explorations of abandoned buildings, he wasn't there for flashy effects or YouTube theatrics. What made his videos stand out was the feeling, the shaky flashlight beam, the whispered plans, the real fear in his voice. But one June evening in 2016, his camera captured something that even he couldn't explain. They'd been trying to access the property for weeks. Every attempt had been blocked by tight-knit neighbors with walkie-talkies and community watch systems. But finally, they found a way in. Climbing through a broken fence, they crept through knee-high grass and piles of shattered bricks until the remains of a forgotten house emerged from the darkness. Or what used to be a house. The roof sagged, dust hung in the air like fog, furniture lay scattered like forgotten memories, and then came the red number, painted on one wall, bold and alone, the number 6. No context, no explanation, just a red 6 standing out like a warning. Then, almost casually, one of them whispered, "Did you see that face in the window?" He tried to play it off like a joke, but his voice cracked a little too much to be convincing. They laughed it off, nerves clearly rattled, and kept exploring, past the windows, past the mangled furniture, and into what looked like an old garage, dusty shelves covered in keys and rusted tools. Just when the tension started to dip, something shifted overhead. Faint, almost like someone dragging something across the ceiling. And then the stairs came into view. This wasn't a scripted jump scare, no sudden music stingers, just quiet, rising panic. A dark stain on the floor caught their eye. Is that blood? They followed it, up the stairs, into a room sealed with nails. One climbed in through the window, and there it was, a body wrapped in a white sheet, unmoving, no screaming, no yelling, just stunned silence, panic breathing, the camera jolting, swinging wildly, and then running, pure, terrified running. They didn't stop until they were outside. The footage ends soon after. They called the police. What followed remains unclear. No follow-ups, no news reports, nothing. Only that red number, that whisper of a face, and the sheet, still online, still unexplained. Encounter 2, Devil's Elbow, Canada. In a quiet patch of Ontario forest, a mansion waits. Half-renovated, part luxury, part decay. The kind of place that confuses the senses. There's working electricity in one room, a rotting piano in another, fridges humming next to graffiti, and a legend whispered by locals, the Devil's Elbow. In August 2019, explorer Jonah from Exploration Unknown arrived at the mansion. At first it looked like a routine shoot, until the sounds began. Faint footsteps upstairs, a distant voice, then silence. He called out gently, explained he wasn't there to steal or vandalize, just exploring, documenting. Then came the voice, loud, clear. "I'm going to kill you." No ambiguity, no misheard whisper, just a full-throated threat coming from the upper floor. There's something primal about the fear that hits when a threat becomes real. Jonah's voice trembled as he backed away. His flashlight flickered. He bolted, didn't stop until he was at his car, doors locked, breathing heavy. Later, he'd admit the voice could have come from anyone, a squatter, another explorer, or something else entirely. But what haunted him most was how long that presence had been watching, listening, waiting. Encounter 3, Rituals in the Ruins, USA. Abandoned schools are eerie enough without the smell of something freshly dead. Josh and his team, Cody, Steve, and John, set out to explore a school complex shut down since 2002. Classrooms frozen in time, maps still on the walls, desks lined up like students might walk in any second. But deeper inside, it changed. Bullet holes riddled lockers, Ammunition shells littered the floor. A makeshift shooting range where children once studied. Then came the kitchen, pans still on the stove, tapes stacked high, sunrooms overturned, pianos rotting, and in one hallway, a smell that made their stomachs turn. Wet, coppery, fresh, what they found looked ritualistic. Duct tape laid out in precise lines, pools of thick, dark fluid. It wasn't dried, it wasn't old. This was recent. The markings on the walls grew stranger, upside-down crosses, cryptic phrases, rooms that looked arranged. They left, came back weeks later. Everything was different. The blood had dried, furniture moved, ritual spaces reset, and in the middle of it all, a chair. The same one they'd seen in the circle, now scrubbed clean, as if the ritual had ended or started again. Encounter 4. Something watches in silence, USA. Cleveland, Ohio, Holton Avenue. Once a bustling neighborhood, now a ghost street. The church is boarded up, houses stripped bare, but one home holds a story that still echoes through its halls. In 2016, a young woman named Jessica Coleman was found inside. No signs of forced entry. Gunshot wound, still unsolved. Years later, Chris Hill, aka Herbex Hill, explored the area. The church's heavy air hung around him. Footsteps echoed louder than they should have. Doors closed behind him without explanation. Upstairs, a door that was wide open just minutes before had shut itself. He brushed it off until he checked his hidden cameras later. A shadow, not dust, not glare. A figure moved across the hallway, closed the door, then vanished. There was no way out of that room, no exit, no passage, just 4 walls and a single view, and that wasn't the worst of it. Inside another home, he found someone living there, not a squatter, not an explorer, just someone. Quiet, hidden behind a curtain, their presence unknown until a whisper from the shadows said, "Sorry," as Chris apologized and ran. Holton Avenue isn't just abandoned, it's inhabited. What made it worse was how little the houses had changed. Family photos still lined dusty mantels. One had a Christmas card from 2004 still pinned to the fridge, its glitter faded, but the handwriting clear. Mail piled in corners like offerings to time, wallpaper peeled like burnt pages. Yet in all the decay, things were too recent. Fresh footprints in the dust, a half-eaten apple sitting on a warped countertop, a candle used, burned just halfway down. In one house, Chris found children's toys arranged in a perfect line, as if someone still cared how they looked. In another, a mattress was freshly indented. Someone had slept there recently. In the church, a cracked stained glass window let in a thin beam of light that landed directly on a single open hymnal. It looked staged, but it wasn't. The pages were damp from the roof leak, yet not warped. Open for a reason. The further Chris went, the more he realized something or someone was trying to stay hidden, not necessarily to attack, just to go unseen. There were signs of life, food wrappers, buckets of water, an unplugged space heater still warm to the touch. And then the noises came again, a single footstep behind him when no one was there, a door handle clicking in place, lights that shouldn't have worked, flickering. He'd come for an exploration, but what he walked into felt more like a confrontation with whatever now called Holton Avenue home. Not just a decaying street, but a place quietly occupied by shadows and secrets. Encounter 5. She Never Left, UK. Most explorers expect ghosts, maybe animals. What Chris and Meg found was far more human. In 2022, they stumbled upon an old farmhouse, rotting, reeking, layers of decay telling decades of neglect. But one room was different, tidy, clean, lived in, an old purse, a plastic bag, a warm chair, then a voice, an elderly woman sitting quietly, calm, still. "You can't live in here," they said. "I do," she answered. She'd been there nearly 30 years, alone. Food delivered by her husband, a TV for company. She didn't want help, didn't want rescue. She just stayed. Maybe abandoned isn't always the right word. Sometimes people live in the ruins because it's all they have, or because it's all they know. The deeper they looked, the more surreal it became. Shoes lined up neatly by the door, a kettle still warm on a tiny stove powered by a frayed extension cord. In the corner, a photo frame had been turned down, faced away from the bed, as if the memory inside it had become too painful to look at. The wallpaper peeled like shedding skin, but someone had pinned fresh flowers to the walls, pressed flat with clear tape. Their color long gone, but their shape still holding. One cupboard held only canned peaches and old tea bags. Another, a dusty radio tuned permanently to static. The floor creaked beneath their steps, but not hers. She moved through it like she'd learned every weak spot in the wood. They asked about her health, her warmth, her safety. She nodded gently, as if none of that really mattered. What did matter was routine, familiarity, a kind of silence that only comes when the outside world has completely forgotten you. The bed was made, impeccably, as if she expected guests, or maybe she just never let it get messy, even after all this time. "It's quiet here," she said softly, almost like an apology. Too quiet sometimes. They offered her slippers, warm blankets, anything, but she politely declined, not out of pride, but out of certainty. This house was her world, her prison, and her peace, not haunted by spirits, but by years. And the choice, it seemed, was never really a choice at all. Encounter 6. The Silhouette in the Temple, USA. Back in Cleveland, one of the most unsettling structures still stands tall, an abandoned Masonic temple over a century old, built in 1916, now a shell of secrecy and rot. In August 2023, Chris, once again exploring alone, documented the building's decay. Grand halls now reduced to rubble, ornate symbols faded and cracked, but as he climbed, something touched him, not imagined, not subtle, a brush across his back. He called out, "Nothing." Later, a door slammed shut behind him. He tried to laugh it off, but the camera caught something his eyes missed, a dark arm, just behind the door. By the time he returned to that room, it was empty, every exit sealed, yet something had been standing there, watching, waiting. The corridors were drenched in mold, the kind that clings to your lungs. Every step creaked beneath decades of dust and water damage. On the wall, a plaque still hung, crooked, bearing a list of names, likely former lodge members. Chris paused at the sight of it. Some of the names had been scratched out violently. Beneath one of them, a handprint, not painted, imprinted, a smear of something brown-black trailing downward like a warning. As he turned a corner, his flashlight flickered again, just for a moment. But in that moment, a reflection flashed in a broken mirror, not his, taller, still, frozen behind him, then gone. The air grew colder the deeper he went, as if the building was sucking heat out of the walls. He entered a former ceremonial hall where tattered curtains swayed though no wind passed. Candles sat melted to the floor in a semicircle, recent. One was still soft. The room felt used. Then came the distant sound, metal dragging on stone. Far off at first, then closer. He froze, listened. Silence. But the dragging resumed. Louder now. It wasn't until he turned back toward the exit that he noticed the words scratched faintly into the doorframe, "Do not let it in." But the door was already open, and the silence returned like a wave. Honorable mention, Curiosity Almost Kills, USA. California, October 2019. Derek, known for his motorcycle vlogs, spots an abandoned house off the highway. Sunlight still overhead. Nothing scary, just curiosity. But inside, the air grew cold. Walk-in closets, crumbling floors, and silence so thick it pressed on the ears. Then a noise, loud, angry, nearby. He ran, fell, scrambled back up, out into the daylight. And just like that, it was over. Except it wasn't, because whatever made that sound never revealed itself. Some buildings rot with time, others rot with memory. And sometimes they don't rot alone. These 6 explorers didn't walk into ghost stories. They walked into real places, with real sounds, real fear, and real disturbing encounters. Maybe these places were never truly abandoned. Maybe they were just waiting. Liked what you saw? Smash that subscribe button and check out more real-world horror